Again, my name is Gwen Sorley. My background is in education. I started using play attention with my clients back in 1996. So, over the past 28 years, I've been using play attention with every age from about 5 years old all the way up through adulthood. So, hopefully, my experiences will give you a really good overview of the program and our process. Now, many of you here today have requested additional information about our spring focus boot camp for adults. And I am going to touch on that boot camp throughout because, as you've seen in some of our emails lately, whenever you start play attention, when you enroll in play attention prior to April 5th, you will be enrolled into our spring focus boot camp for free. And there are a lot of great benefits. I will be touching on those throughout, but also at the end of the webinar, we'll go over some of the finer points. And tomorrow, not tomorrow, on Friday, we're going to have a webinar just to go a little bit more in depth in those areas of what's involved with boot camp. So if you are at any point interested in either attending that boot camp webinar or just getting a little bit more information, you can type boot camp in the chat box and we'll follow up with you with more information on that opportunity. Now, many of you here today, I know as I'm looking through the list, you have attended webinars in the past. And you know, if you've attended some of our past webinars, you're very familiar with the areas we cover. And oftentimes we discuss areas of executive function. So we might talk about emotion regulation or procrastination or organization. And in those webinars, we give different tips and strategies that we recommend you use. And those tips and strategies are good. We want you to have those tips and strategies. However, at some point, we do have to get to the root cause and also start helping develop skills. Because in order for those tips and strategies to be successful or be useful to you, we have to make certain that you have the cognitive skills and that cognitive control that you need in order for those tips and strategies to work. So I can give you a really good example. I use this a lot of times because it was in one of my conversations I was having with one of our adult clients. And she said, people, they just tell me, just write a to-do list, just write a to-do list. And she said, I know how to write a to-do list. Writing a to-do list is not my area of difficulty. I start every day with a to-do list. The problem is I never get anything done on the to-do list. And so that really summarizes what I just discussed, right? We can give you tips and strategies, how to write a to-do list, how to write a calendar, how to organize a project. But in order for those strategies to be useful, you have to have the skills in place that are required. And that means in order to make certain that to-do list, for example, works, then we first have to improve memory so that you remember you have a to-do list. We have to work on sustained attention so that when we start on number one, you're going to be able to sustain your attention on number one until you complete it. So that task completion. We also have to work on your ability to filter distractions. So you don't start number one and suddenly get distracted by the laundry in the corner of the room, right? Or something else that is in the environment distracting you. We also have to work on impulse control. So you don't start with number one and impulsively jump down to number three. And then also we want to work on mindfulness so that you're able to stay in the present moment and actually avoid procrastination and stay with that task until completion. So there are a lot of skills that are required in order for those tips and strategies to work. And that's exactly what we can address within your customized play attention program. So we specialize in one thing. We specialize in helping you reach your goals. So, if you would, I know that all of you here today are here because you have a goal in mind. Go ahead and type your goal in the chat box so we can share that, your responses with others here today, because it's really important that Others hear what your goal is because I'm sure that we're going to have very similar responses from many of you. So perhaps you're here because you have a child who's really bright but struggling in the school system. Or maybe you're an adult and you feel that you're just not as productive as you should be. Or maybe in the workplace, you're having a hard time reaching specific career goals because of attention difficulties or weak executive function. Go ahead and type in the chat box and let me know. And I'll share those with some of you. So, Jim says that he's here because he wants to improve his executive function and be able to better control his emotions. Uh, Para says, cleaner space, cross out items on the to-do list. Susan says, my child needs to be able to negotiate assertively rather than aggressively. And I like the way you make that distinction, Susan. That's very important. Elaine says, need to have less chaos in my life. Nathan says, my goal is to set and accomplish personal and professional goals. Excellent. Kelly says, get organized, stay on task, and follow through. Natalie says she's here because her 8-year-old daughter is struggling in school and there is a possibility she'll have to return to the same grade. Okay. And Bethany says that she is interested in using play attention with her clients to improve executive function. So good. So there are a lot of different backgrounds here. Some of you are adults looking to improve your personal skills. Some of you are here for your children or your clients. Annie says she wants to support her 14-year-old son to be more self-motivated with schoolwork. So you all have these fantastic goals. And what we can do is create a customized neurocognitive training plan to help you reach these goals, to help you, as Jill says, avoid procrastination. And she needs to also learn how to use timelines. So all of your goals can be reached. And we were the pioneers in neurocognitive training. We've been doing neurocognitive training since the early 90s. Like I said, I've been using play attention with my clients since 1996. So when we were first researching, it was actually the founder of our company, Peter Freer, who is working with both children and adults with ADHD or weak executive function in the late 1980s. And he started researching the different attention training techniques that were being used in the field. And he came across the work that Dr. Pope and Dr. Paulson were doing with their simulator training. And that means that when their pilots and astronauts were using their simulator training, they were monitoring the brain states of those pilots and astronauts. So if they were very attentive, if they were in that peak attentive state, then all of the controls were very easy to use. They were almost automatic. But if they became stressed or anxious or distracted, and they weren't as attentive, then all of the controls became sluggish. It was harder for them to do their job. So they were incorporating, allowing the pilots and astronauts to see their attentive state while actually doing their job training. And the founder of our company, Peter Freer, thought, well, that's brilliant. If I can allow my students or my clients to actually see their attention in real time while practicing and developing the skills they need for success, then I have a comprehensive program. And that is the very foundation of play attention. So what makes us unique and effective is what we teach and how we teach it. Play Attention is the only program available that actually integrates feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping to provide you with the most comprehensive approach available. So you see on the screen the body wave armband, and I'm sure many of you have seen it in some of our other materials, but I'm going to share it with you here. So that's the body wave armband. On the back, you'll see those 3 sensors. And I'm going to slide this armband on my arm. So now those 3 sensors are monitoring my brain activity that tells us how attentive I am. And then that information is given over to the computer where I'm allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises just with my mind, or more specifically, my attention alone. And I receive constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not I truly am focused and paying attention. And think about that. That is a critical component to the learning process. Because right now, if you think about your child or your partner or your clients, and you look at them and you say, I need you to pay attention, what do they typically say back to you? If you look at your child, Annie, and you say, I need you to pay attention, what do you typically hear back? I want to see if you're hearing the same thing I once heard when I was in the classroom. And even as an adult, if someone says that to you, what are you typically saying back? Annie says, what? So that might. Ava, exactly. That's what I always heard. So Ava said, they say, I am paying attention. And Annie says, I was listening. So that is really typical, right? They'll come back and say, I am. And usually they really think that they are, but they just haven't developed what it takes for them personally. If you're an adult here, because we have a lot of adults here today who said, they are looking at it for themselves. And if you think about your experience, maybe you often hear, I need you to pay attention, but it can also occur when you're in a conversation and you're having a conversation, or maybe you're in a Zoom meeting and you really think you're paying attention. And then someone 20 minutes into the conversation says, Nathan, what do you think? And Nathan thinks, I don't know, because at some point he may have drifted. And I bet all of you have experienced that at some point where you find you don't have that self regulation in check that allows you to pick up when you're not paying attention, when you're drifting. And more importantly, it's difficult to regain that attention once you lose it. So that's the point of our training, is to help you develop that cognitive control you need in order to better self-regulate and strengthen executive function. So what this means is that this body wave armband controls all of the cognitive exercises. So no matter what you're working on within play attention, whether you're working on attention stamina or working memory or auditory processing or social skills, you have to be paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then the activity will stop or the character will go in the wrong direction. And immediately, you're not in that attentive state. Just like the pilots and astronauts, as soon as their controls became sluggish, they knew they weren't in the zone and they had to self-correct. That's what we're doing here while you're actually practicing the cognitive skills that lay the foundation for strong executive function. So there are three catalysts necessary for brain change. And when we talk about improving executive function, we are talking about sparking brain change, creating those new neural pathways that are required for strong executive function. And so there are three catalysts required for sparking brain change. One, of course, is attention. And we just talked about how this body wave armband is going to monitor our attentive state. So we have to activate every exercise with our attention. And that's critical because you can have a great teacher. You can have a great counselor or a great life coach. But if you're having a hard time paying attention to that individual or that process, it's really difficult for you to get maximum benefit. So that's why we make certain that no matter what you're working on, you have to be actively engaged in order for you to get maximum benefit and in order for you to then transfer and generalize the skills you're learning. Also, you need challenge, right? If you come into a learning situation and you're 100% successful, you're not going to learn anything because you're already a master, right? You won't learn, you won't spark any brain change. So we have to have challenge. So within this body wave armband and our algorithms, we have a specially designed auto adjust algorithm. That means when you put that body wave armband on, we're only looking at your best ability to pay attention. And the bar is set there. If you're able to reach or exceed that level of attention, then you're able to activate the exercise. If you are able to maintain that for a given number of seconds, then in the background, we're going to raise the bar just a little bit. Now you have to be that much more attentive in order to be successful. So there's the challenge. Now, the opposite is true too, because I know some of you parents here are thinking, well, I don't want her to be frustrated. She's already frustrated at school or at home. So we know that also. We have to be challenged, but not frustrated. So let's say we challenge you throughout, and then suddenly you're getting a little fatigued. You can't reach that same level of attention. So we bring you back down to your last successful level, and then we gradually build you up again. So that auto adjust algorithm is the best for learning. We're keeping you at a challenging yet success based pace. Also, deliberate practice. We can't just come into our learning situation and just go through the motions, right? You're not going to spark brain change. So there has to be a deliberate practice model in place. So our artificial intelligence, sheer genius, will always set mini goals for you. So if you come in and you're working on one of our exercises, let's say called time on task, it'll say, yesterday you completed this, Jill, with 70% attention. Today, let's try 72%. And if you do that, you earn a point, and the point goes into your reward system. So, attention, challenge, deliberate practice, all those catalysts required for brain change are incorporated into your program. Now, we've been doing this integrative approach of feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping for 30 years. But Tufts University School of Medicine wanted to know, is that integration important? Or can we simply give you a series of cognitive exercises, or what you hear a lot about as brain games, and get the same results? So they went into the Boston Public School District, and they had three different groups of individuals, all identified as ADHD. The first group received play attention, so they had full integration. The second received just cognitive exercises, so brain games on the computer, no feedback technology, and no behavior shaping. And the third was their control, and they received no intervention at all. And at the end of the study, the play attention students were the only students that showed global improvements in all areas, including academic, social, behavioral, and executive function. They were also the only students that, if they started the study and they were on medication, because some of them were on, some of them were not. But if they were on medication and in the play attention group, those students had an average decrease in their medication, whereas the other two groups had an average increase. And that goes back to skill building. If we can help you develop the skills that you lack, there may be less of a necessity to mask symptoms. So that's important for you to keep in mind too. You can use play attention whether you're on medication or not on medication. Medication helps some people by controlling symptoms. The difficulty is that medication doesn't teach any skills or change behaviors. So we don't want to medicate and fail to educate. We want to use this time to help you develop the skills that you lack. And that's what play attention can do. Play attention can teach the skills that medication alone cannot teach. So if any of you are interested in receiving those tough studies, you haven't reviewed them yet, and you would like a copy of those, just type Tufts in the chat box, and I'll make certain that we follow up with you and get those studies to you as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually demonstrate play attention to you, because I want you to get an experience of what I mean when I talk about feedback, because feedback is such a critical component of this process, right? We all learn from immediate feedback. And it's difficult to do with attention because you may be looking at your partner or your child, and they're looking back at you, and you're having a conversation and you think they're paying attention, but their minds are off in the Bahamas somewhere, right? You can't see attention. You can guess, but you can't really know for sure. And that's the power of that neurotechnology, is it can immediately provide you the feedback so that you can learn, provides you an experience. So now, before I switch my camera over and share actually a demonstration of play attention, I first need to know if everyone's been listening. So I'm going to actually put the poll up on my screen here. And you should be able to see the poll in just a moment. And if you can see that poll, just plug in your answer. What is this body wave armband monitoring? What is this body wave armband monitoring? Is it eye movement, breathing, brain activity, or FM radio? Okay, many of you see the poll. If you don't see it for some reason because you're on your phone, you can type it in the chat box. So what is this body wave armband monitoring? Is it eye movement, breathing, brain activity, or FM radio? All right, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the answer is, and 82% of you responded correctly. So it's really important everyone listens. This body wave armband is monitoring my brain activity, nothing else other than brain activity, indicative of attention. And that's important, right? Because breathing, eye movement, that's not indicative of attention. Attention doesn't start from breathing. Your breathing pattern definitely helps, but attention starts, it originates in the brain. So we're giving you real-time feedback regarding your attentive state. Okay, so now I am going to share my screen, and I just have to switch over in a different manner. So right now, you should be able to see my play attention screen here. And I can no longer see the chat box, so I'm just going to have to assume that you are able to see my play attention program here. And the very first exercise I'm going to share with you is attention stamina. This is teaching me how to direct and sustain my attention at will, much like being able to pay attention to the teacher in the classroom or your colleagues in the workplace. Now, I can choose from different characters, but one is this diver. I'm going to select the diver. Now, remember, I'm powering everything with my attentive state. So when I click play, you're first going to see a transition screen. And this transition screen, you should see your game is loading. It's helping me transition from my conversation with you into the actual exercise. And then once we get past this exercise, this game is loading screen, you're going to see my character at the top of the screen. Now, I'm not paying attention because I'm talking to you. So my character is at the top and my attention meter to the left is white. So now I'm going to stop talking to you and I'm going to focus in on my task, which is to mentally drive him down to the bottom of the ocean just with my attention alone. So just give me a moment. Now that's as low as he goes right there. Now notice as soon as I started talking to you and got off task, he started to float up because I'm no longer as attentive. And now I have to control that behavior, control that daydreaming, focus back in. Okay. So you can see it's kind of like a piece of exercise equipment for the brain. We're working areas that right now are weak. And by providing you with that constant and immediate feedback regarding your attention, you're then able to develop the self regulation and self monitoring you need in order to recognize when you're paying attention, recognize when you're not paying attention, and more importantly, when you're not paying attention, you'll know how to correct it because you've had an opportunity to actually practice it. So let's look at all of our data that's stored. You'll see here that I worked on that exercise for 1 minute and 17 seconds. Of that time, I was actually paying attention 38% of the time. And my recovery speed, which is from the time I lost my attention to the time I regained it, was right around 9 seconds. So now sheer genius, our artificial intelligence, is going to take all of this data and start setting that deliberate practice model. Yesterday, you were able to complete this with 38% attention. Today, let's try 40%. And if you do that, you earn a point. The point goes into your reward system. So, progress tracking, reward system, goal setting, all of that is tracked for you by our AI. And then there is a beginner, intermediate, and advanced skill option. So, you see bronze, silver, and gold. There are certain benchmarks you're going to have to reach before moving up to intermediate and then to advanced. And again, the AI will graduate you when appropriate. And when we graduate you, we tie in more skills required for executive functions, such as processing speed, impulse control, distractors, and that mental flexibility, those transitions. So you'll see it gets a little bit more complex as you go up, and you are going to have to use your mouse or your keyboard to respond at certain times. And that is going to be a little bit more complex because we're tying in those skills, but everything is still driven with your attentive state. Okay. So let me go back and go and share my presentation again here. Okay, so Annie, that's a great question, and I'm going to get to more of that in just a moment. Okay, so isn't that so amazing if you're able to provide an experience? Because right now, if you think about how we try to teach attention, we try to teach it through lecture, right? We say, sit still, eyes on me, pay attention. We try to tell them what to do. But now we're making it an experience where you actually have time to practice. And now that was just one exercise. We have a variety of different exercises that are all required to improve executive function. And I've been bringing up this term a lot, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. But just in case you're not as familiar, executive function you can kind of think of as the CEO of your brain. It's what allows you to control your attention, your behaviors, your emotions, allows you to control your ability to avoid procrastination, remain on task, organize your materials, organize yourself. So it's all of these mental processes that we use on a day-to-day basis. However, these areas tend to be weakest for individuals with ADHD. And no one is born with strong executive function, but we all have the potential to develop it. And that development starts right after birth and continues through our mid to late 20s. Unfortunately, for many of our students, and Annie can probably relate to this because she has a 14-year-old, and so she can probably relate around that middle school year. That's where we expect everyone to have strong executive function. That's where we expect everyone to be more independent and organized. And that development doesn't always naturally happen. There are a lot of factors that can inhibit that development, one of which is ADHD. So it is critically important that we take a step back in order to start developing the skills required. Ava says, how long do you get to play the games with your brain? So we're going to go over the different cognitive skills that are available for your program, Ava. And in order to really get maximum benefit, we recommend that you use play attention, you train on play attention for at least an hour per week. Now, that hour could be broken up. It could be 2 30-minute sessions, but most people do 4 15-minute sessions. If you're working in a professional setting, in a clinic or an educational center or in a school, you might do 2 30-minute sessions if people are coming to your office. However, if you're working at home, you might tend to do more 4 15-minute sessions, whatever works best for you. At least an hour per week. You'll start, Ava, to see good results after about 6 weeks of consistent training. You're going to notice that you are more focused, you are more engaged. You gave your child 2 instructions, and they were able to follow through with those instructions without being reminded or redirected. You're going to start seeing these small steps of improvement. But the research shows in order to gain permanency, In order for us to know not only will you have these skills now, but you'll have them 20 years from now, we have to work to a point of permanency, which usually takes place around that 40-hour mark. So around 10 months, if you're working an hour per week of consistent training, then you and your executive function coach will review your data within your software, make certain you're at all the advanced skill options. We'll do a post evaluation to make certain everything's transferred and generalized. If everything looks good, then we'll start graduating you from the program. If it looks like there's more work to be done, we simply customize the plan and we keep going. The important thing for you to remember is that you own the program. So whether it takes you, 10 months or 16 months, it doesn't matter. We continue working as long as necessary. And so that is a really important information. And even once you graduate, if you are using the home program and you want to continue using it for peak performance, you can do that. So let's look at the different modules that we can incorporate into your program. Keeping in mind, you won't need all of them. That's where the customization comes in. But let's look at what we address. First, in the modules that are the foundations of executive function, we work on attention stamina, which I just showed you, your ability to direct and sustain your attention at will. We can also work on discriminatory processing. I recommend that for any individual here who has a hard time staying focused and visually tracking. So that's like if the teacher says, he does great when I stand right next to him. But as soon as I walk away, he's out the window and out the door, and then he has that diffused attention where he's paying attention to a little bit of everything. Task completion. This is like the homework that should take 15 minutes, but tends to take 2 or 3 hours. For adults, I'm exhausted at the end of the day because I've been busy all day long, but I finished nothing. I start a million things, I finish nothing. That ability to start and complete. Short-term memory is the ability to remember dates, names, facts. Filtering distractions, discriminatory processing. That is the ability to filter both auditory and visual stimuli. So a lot of the adults I talk to, they'll say, it's like there are a million different TV sets going on in my head all at the same time. And so it's not a lack of attention, right? There's no deficit of attention. You have great attention. The problem is you're paying attention to absolutely everything. So that's why we make certain that no matter where you are, what you're engaged in, you're going to be able to stay focused to what's important and filter out all of that unnecessary stimuli. Another point I should have made when we looked at attention stamina, you noticed our graphics. That's about as exciting as our graphics get. All of our graphics are very simple. They're very low stimuli. And the reason we do this, and I bet many of you here can relate to this, the reason we keep everything low stimuli is because we know if we give you something high interest or high stimuli, you can hyper focus in those situations where it's hard to draw you away from it, right? So we don't need to teach anyone here how to pay attention to high stimuli or high interest or entertainment. You can do that. What we need to teach is what's more difficult, and that's how to pay attention to low stimuli, much like the classroom teacher or the workplace where it cannot possibly compete with that high stimuli. So that's why everything's presented very simply so that you can learn how to pay attention to that low stimuli at will. And then you'll see here on the bottom line, transfer and generalization. Now, this goes to Annie's very important question. She said, how does this attention or other areas then transfer into life? So this is where we're working on taking all of the skills you've learned within play attention and apply them. But first, you have to remember, I just went through some of our exercises, and you notice that I can relate exactly what I'm doing during our play attention session back into the classroom or back at home. So we're working on skills that you're utilizing every day in other areas. So that's the transfer and generalization. But then we also have an exercise called Academic Bridge. And this is where you can do your real work exercises, or you could be doing homework while connected to the body wave armband. Now, notice my student here, she's wearing that body wave armband, but she's not looking at the screen. She's paying attention to her writing. As long as she's paying attention to her homework, she's going to hear from the computer, good, great. If she starts to drift, she'll hear focus. And then she knows she's not in that state she needs to be in order to process and finish that assignment. So this again is where we take all of the information that you've learned and apply them to your real work. And I just gave a child um, example, but if you are an adult, then we can customize it accordingly. So I work with one adult who is a high school English teacher, and she had been struggling with grading papers. It was taking her 2 hours, 2 days on the weekend just to grade papers. And so we started utilizing the academic bridge during that time. And she started learning about things she thought were helping her that she was doing, they were not helping her. She started learning about things in her environment that were distracting her, picking up on that and being able to redirect herself. So there was a lot of self-realization and practice involved, but now she's down to 2 hours on the weekend instead of 2 days on the weekend. So again, we'll take your situation and incorporate what you need to work on for transfer and generalization. Okay? Now, there is also a beginner, intermediate, and advanced skill option. Remember, I mentioned that. So we work on those different areas required for executive function. Now, these are the additional modules that are available to you. These are typically add-on modules. They're usually about $50 a piece to add into your program. But if you are starting your Play Attention program and getting that free enrollment into our spring focus boot camp, you're going to receive access to all of these exercises in your program. So not only the first 6 that we just reviewed, but also working memory. So that's the ability to take in information, hold that information in order to complete a task. Auditory processing, that's the ability to follow through with multiple step verbal instructions. Hand-eye coordination, that's more about small motor control. So, for example, handwriting. Social skills, important if you have anyone who you're working with that has a hard time picking up those social cues. They miss the look, they miss the shake of the head. Social skills is a great application for that. Spatial memory is remembering where things are located. So if you're constantly losing your keys or your wallet or your phone, that's a great one. Mental math, if you are struggling with any of the core foundational math skills. Mindfulness, this is a powerful component because we hear so much about how mindfulness helps with the symptoms of ADHD. And it's true. However, we can't look at someone with ADHD or anxiety and say, now I want you to practice mindfulness, because mindfulness is hard. It's hard for all of us, but especially if you have that running mind or that internal dialogue that just won't shut off. So we teach you how to stay in the present moment through feedback. So you'll see a lotus flower in the middle of the screen. Once you have your mind in the present moment, you're going to be able to start opening the petal on the flower. If you start thinking, when's my next appointment? Who do I have to call? When do I have to pick up the kids from school? That petal's going to start to close because you're no longer in the present moment. And you have to bring yourself back in order to continue. So we're teaching you how to enhance that mindfulness, but we're providing that immediate feedback. And then motor skills, that's a great one. If you have more bumps, bruises, accidents than your peers, it helps with that mind-body coordination. Now, as I went through those different areas, you may already know many of the areas you'd like to address. However, we do have an online ADHD test. If you have not yet taken that and you're interested to really see a little bit more of what your plan would look like in order to address your needs or your child's needs or your client's needs, go ahead and type in ADHD test, and I'll make certain we get that link to you, so that we can go through a series of questions and it will generate a proposed outline of what your Play Attention curriculum would actually look like. What can we address within your program? So if you have not yet taken that ADHD test, you can type in test or ADHD test and we'll make certain we get that out to you. And if you'd like, we can follow up with a consultation to review all of your answers and just talk about your customized program a little bit further. Now, also with that spring focus boot camp that we've been discussing, we're going to take that one step further. And everyone who's enrolled in that boot camp is going to get a free focus assessment pre, mid, and post evaluation. So before we start play attention, we're going to do this ADHD test, but we're also going to give you or your child the focus assessment, which is a norm reference test of attentional control. It takes 20 minutes, it's computer based, and at the end of the assessment, we receive a full report that tells us how you performed compared to the performance of your peers. We look at 4 different constructs of attention that include consistency, performance, impulse control, and your ability to deal with distractors, both auditory and visual. So the ADHD test online that I mentioned is great, but it's subjective, right? It's based on your observation and your experience. So I like to do that, but also combine it with the focus assessment because that's more objective, right? It's data driven. So this will give us more information when customizing your plan. We're going to do this again at 20 hours of training because remember that will be midway in your training to make certain we're transferring and generalizing, allows us time to customize the plan a little bit more. And then again at 40 hours when we're looking at graduation, because as Annie said, what about transfer and generalization? How are we going to look at that? Because it's great if you can do a fantastic play attention session. That's not our goal, right? Our goal is to make certain you're doing well in life, that you're taking these skills and applying them. All right. Sure, Laurel. I'll get more information to you on that as well. And just keep in mind, if you are enrolling in the boot camp, that focus assessment will be included. If you just wanted to do the focus assessment, that is $50, and we need about a 45-minute block of time afterwards to review the results. Okay. Annie, yes, the home system comes with a user license for 2 people. That means at any one time you can enroll 2 family members into the program, and you can upgrade that user license because as you can imagine, it's rare that we only work with one family member. Usually we work with one parent and one child, if not the entire family. So very easy to upgrade as well. Great question. So now your play attention program will include everything you need to run your system. So you'll have your body wave armband, your customized neurocognitive training program that we've been talking about how we're going to customize. The behavior shaping component is something we'll turn on if there are self-distracting behaviors. So any of you here want to work on self-distracting behaviors like skin picking, nail biting, chewing on their shirt, fidgeting, any of those types of behaviors. If you said yes, then we're going to turn on the behavior shaping because, and Janice says nail biting, absolutely, that's a very common one. And it's so powerful here because you get a one-to-one correlation on how those behaviors affect your attention, right? If I had that character at the bottom of the ocean and I started to bite my nails or pick my skin, immediately that character goes up. Now I have a realization that I'm doing that behavior. And not only that, but I see how that behavior affects my attention. And then our AI is going to set behavioral goals so I can start learning how to control those behaviors. So no longer just saying, don't do that, right? We're guiding you through the process and helping you develop that self-regulation and self-monitoring. And that is so critical when learning how to control attention, behaviors, memory, developing overall cognitive control. You'll also have your personal executive function coach, which I want to point out when we're talking about the focus boot camp in particular. That coach is not only just going to bring you through an onboarding session where we bring you through a practice session to make sure you're real comfortable with everything before working, but that person can also be your consistency coach. Because how many of you here, and you can raise your hand or just type in yes, how many of you feel like in order to be successful, I need that accountability buddy. I need someone to keep me on track, especially in those early sessions where I'm developing that initial habit, right? And that's what your coach is there for. So, if you need a 15-minute a week, just Zoom touch base meeting, then that's what we'll do. Anything that you need, if it's a text message that you would really find beneficial, just send me a text every other day, make certain I'm on track. That is what your consistency coach or your accountability buddy, whatever you want to call them, is going to be there for, to keep you on track. That includes your training that I mentioned and a lifetime membership. So, someone else had asked, how long do you have the system? Remember, the program is yours. You're going to graduate probably around that 40-hour mark, but you own the program. So, if you want to come back and do that peak performance, you can do that. So again, an hour per week, you can break that hour up. Your coach is going to chat with you about your lifestyle, what works best for you, 15 minutes, 10-minute sessions, 10 minutes a day, and develop these skills. Sure, Laurel. So I understand that the Zoom meeting definitely would help. And then you'll start seeing, remember, those results after about 6 weeks. But in order to gain permanency, we're looking at, on average, about 40 hours. And we'll do that post evaluation in order to make certain we're ready to graduate. And remember, you're not only going to have a live human coach, but you also have AI, which is going to set your curriculum. So when you log in, Shared Genius is going to say, Laurel, today we're going to work on attention stamina, time on task, and working memory. So Shared Genius will set the curriculum based on your previous performance, and then set those mini goals, track your progress, help you with your reward system. And you're always going to be able to go into your data and analyze your progress. But as we get data, this is something good to review also with your coach. Let's look at your data and see how you're progressing. Look at those benchmarks. So that is something we can do along the way as well. And you have access to all of that. So again, we'll customize your program, take you through that practice session, set up your consistency, and be there to do your check-ins along the way to make certain you're reaching certain benchmarks. And all of this combined is going to help you reach those goals you outlined in the beginning of our session, to become more productive, to be able to complete tasks, to be able to better manage your time, to improve your relationships, to get those promotions at work that you've been chasing, or for your child to be able to actually show what they know and be successful in school and really enhance all of those positives about you. Because, a lot of times we focus on the negatives about ADHD, but there's so many positives. So many of our clients are so bright, very creative. They think outside the box. We just need to have that cognitive control so that we can manage and enhance all of those positives. And that's what we're going to focus on. Esther, you can bring this to Mexico. We ship straight to Mexico. We ship around the world. So no problem bringing it into Mexico. And we do have Play Attention in Spanish. You'll just switch the language when you receive it. And you can use Play Attention in Spanish if that is better for you as well. Okay. And if you want to follow up, that's for anyone here. If you would prefer your executive function coach to speak Spanish or to do a consult in Spanish, you can just certainly let me know that as well. Okay. So now there are two programs that we've been discussing, the home system that we touched on a little bit about the user license, and then also the professional system. The only difference between the two programs is in the user license. So the home system comes with a user license for 2 people. Those user licenses are reusable, or if you have more family members you want to enroll right away, each additional user license is $50. Your professional system is an unlimited user license. So if you're thinking, I have 25 clients I could enroll tomorrow, then you'll have an unlimited user license and there's never any relicensing fees involved at all. Okay. And if you are a professional and you're thinking about doing distance training or small group, we do have iLab available, which will give you a little bit more flexibility in your planning with your clients. So if you want more information on that, just let me know as well. So, both of those systems will again include everything you need to run your program along with your lifetime support. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and I do hope that we will see you in an upcoming webinar or consult and in our boot camp for sure. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone. You have a great afternoon.